Dash module number 4, the tachometer, engine RPM display. Let's power up in normal running mode. And we can see we have a 0 indication on the RPM gauge. And a number of bar gauges. If we put a speed signal onto the unit now, actually this is something I should have mentioned in the video sections on the speedometer and the miles per hour. This is something I should have mentioned on the video sections for the speedometer board as well. That clicking sound you hear is not a relay working, it's to try and simulate the clicking sound that you heard on the TV show. It's actually just the onboard speaker clicking away, and that's an option that you can switch on or off. You can either have that authentic clicking sound on or off, or not. We also have a high sensitivity mode. In the same way we had a high sensitivity mode for the speedo bar gauge, we also have a high sensitivity mode for the tacho bar gauge. So switching that on doubles the number of LEDs at any particular engine RPM. The bar gauges that we use, we've got these configured at the moment as single bar gauges from left to right. Single bar gauges, 14 element bar gauges. The top one we use to simulate oil pressure. Now some cars only have an oil pressure switch, so they'll be the full on or full off. But on here we're feeding in a signal as if it was coming from a sensor. So we have an analog indication. We have a vacuum gauge, engine vacuum gauge, working right to left. And at the bottom we have a voltmeter, which is a little bit out of calibration at the moment. We need to set the calibration up on this unit. Let's just power that down and let's go into show mode. So we're going to power up now in show mode, and that will just cycle the bar gauges up and down and the engine RPM indication. That clicking sound can be turned on or off in normal mode and or in show mode independently. So you can choose to have the clicking sound in show mode only, or in both show mode and normal mode, or in none of the modes. Okay, so that's show mode. Let's take a look at output test mode. So let's go via the menu. In the same way with the other units, we can go into this menu mode and choose which mode we want. So here's output test mode. Again, testing each segment of each numeric display, each LED individually and with a number of different patterns. Each LED in the bar gauge. Take my word for it, these LEDs are a lot brighter than they look on here. It's just that I'm filming this in quite bright sunlight. Oh yes, a number of different patterns were put on the bar gauge, just to show that we can. Then we switch the display full on, all elements, and vary the brightness. First of all, just on the numerics. And then just on the LED light bars, because the brightness of the LED light bars and the brightness of the numerics are controlled individually. And then an audio tone test. and back round again. So let's power off, and now we'll try input test mode. So power up again with that latching switch in the on position. Use push button number 1 to select the desired mode, input test, then push button number 2 to go into that mode. What we see now is because we only have one numeric display on here, we want to be able to show all the analog inputs, so you have to select them one by one, unlike on DM2 where we could select individual, where we could see all of the analog inputs together because we had so many displays. On this we can only see one at one time, but we choose which one we want by successively pressing push button number 1. So that's analog input 0, which is one of the potentiometers not connected, and that's also reflected on the state of this bar gauge. So the flashing LED indicates which bar gauge we're looking at on the numeric display. This is the second bar gauge, second potentiometer. Again, it's indicating FF, meaning it's not connected. This one is oil pressure, I believe. So if I change the oil pressure input, the bar gauge will change and the hexadecimal value will change. Press it again. We're looking at this one now. This is the vacuum input. And the final time will give us the supply voltage measured as a hexadecimal number. The reason for these two LEDs, actually, these are indicating the state of a spare low switch discrete and a spare high switch discrete. If we press this push button again, we just get a pulse counter which just cycles round. And the final time we'll come back to analog input 0. So that's input test mode on Dash module number 4.